Have you ever known that strange silence that forms when everything is over? That silence is the absence of a presence. It is the deep void left by a soul that was infused into every moment of your life, now no longer being there. Today, we will pull back a curtain that most often remains unseen. We will look at the story of a man who hurt a good woman, who rejected her unconditional love, loyalty, and compassion in a moment he did not deserve it. Usually the story ends right here, doesn't it? The woman gets hurt, the man moves on. They say that's the way of the world, but this is only half of the truth. Even less than half, because just like the laws of physics, the soul also has invisible, yet unbreakable laws, and one of these laws states, every energy you send out into the universe will one day inevitably return to you. When you break a heart, the pieces of that heart don't just scatter on the ground. Some of those pieces invisibly lodge themselves into your own soul. On this journey, we will be accompanied by a wise guide who illuminated the darkest corridors of the human soul. Carl Jung. Jung says, a person can never achieve real and lasting peace without first integrating within themselves, without accepting both the light and dark aspects of their soul. And a man's act of hurting a good woman is often a tragic expression of his escape from himself and from the most precious part of his own soul. So, after that door closes, after that momentary feeling of anger or relief passes, what truly happens in the man's lonely soul? And most importantly, how does the abandoned, heartbroken woman rise from the ashes of this devastation, reborn, and even stronger? These are the questions we will pursue today. Part 1. The False Victory and the E-Shape. In the first moments of goodbye, a drunken euphoria of victory often reigns in the man's world, a momentary feeling of freedom. Perhaps a deep relief. As if a great weight has been lifted from his back. There are no more expectations to meet. No complex emotional knots to untie. It seems as if only a straight, problem-free road stretches out before him. This is his blind spot. The greatest illusion of this story, because what he feels is not true freedom, but an escape from responsibility. An escape from confronting his own inner world, from realizing his own potential. What lies beneath this momentary victory? This is where our guide Jung's light comes in. A good woman is by nature a mirror. Her presence and her light illuminate not only the man's good sides, but also his locked-away shadows, his flaws and his shortcomings. Woman's compassion reflects the man's rudeness back at him. Her loyalty reveals his tendency toward infidelity. Her desire for growth exposes his inertia and fear of clinging to his comfort zone. And the man is deeply disturbed by what he sees in this mirror. But instead of accepting that the image belongs to him, he chooses to shatter the mirror. So, in truth, the act of hurting is not an attack on the woman. It is a desperate attack on the man's own shadow, on the darkness within himself that he is afraid to confront. He is not punishing the woman, but his own incomplete reflection that he sees in her mirror. The false relief that immediately follows the separation is this shadow's temporary victory. He has managed to escape confrontation. He has shattered the mirror. He immerses himself in a frenzy of activity to celebrate this victory. He works more, pursues new hobbies, superficial relationships. But all this noise is a futile effort to drown out that silence beginning to grow inside. It is like trying to fill a bottomless pit with pebbles. No matter how many you throw in, the pit never fills. Only the sound of the stones hitting the bottom echoes. It is like putting a band-aid on a deep wound. From the outside, everything seems normal, but inside the wound continues to fester and become infected. That momentary victory is actually just the beginning of a much greater defeat in the future. Part 2, The Whispers and the Archetype, covers that momentary victory and false sense of freedom like a thin layer of dust. Days, weeks, months pass. The noisy celebration gives way to the monotonous rhythm of everyday life. It is in this moment of quieting that something begins to change. At first, it's subtle, as faint as a whisper. The smell of the coffee he drinks at a cafe suddenly reminds him of another morning, another smile. A song playing on the radio is a melody they once sang together. The song ends, but the melody continues to play in his mind. A piece of clothing he sees on the street, a hair color, a laugh. All are sharp, small traces left behind by the woman who was once the center of his life. At first, these moments are innocent and brief. A momentary daydream, a slight sigh. Then life goes on, but over time, these whispers grow stronger. Because they are not just memories, they are signals from the depths of the soul. This is where another fundamental concept of Jung's comes into play. The anima. When a man hurts a good woman and pushes her out of his life, he doesn't just lose a partner. He loses the living mirror that reflected his anima, the feminine and emotional aspect of his soul. The anima withdraws. And with its withdrawal, the colors of the man's world begin to fade. Life is technically the same, but it no longer has the same taste. Things that once seemed meaningful appear empty and mechanical. It is a deep sense of lack, hard to put into words. As if an organ has been removed from his body and its place can never be filled. He seeks new relationships to cope with this feeling of emptiness. But he faces a bitter reality, the comparison trap. Every new person who enters his life is unknowingly compared to the ghost of the woman who left. No one's laughter is as genuine as hers. No one's conversation is as deep. No one understands his silence as well as she did. No one can embrace his flaws with as much compassion. The woman who left has unknowingly become a gold standard, a benchmark. And this standard is so high that everyone new seems pale in her shadow. These comparisons painfully remind the man of what he has lost. He slowly realizes that what he lost was not just a person, but a feeling, a sense of belonging, a home. The whispers have now turned into noise. And the castle he built from that false freedom begins to crack. Part 3. Rebirth. The woman's journey wine. Let's turn our camera for a moment from the man's shaken world to the other hero of the story. The hurt woman. At the beginning of the story, she is a wreck. Her heart is broken, her trust shaken, her worth disregarded. The first days pass with tears, sleepless nights, and endless questions of why. This is the process of accepting the deep wound the soul has received. Society may see this as a weakness, but in fact, this is where the greatest strength is born. Because for something to be rebuilt, the old must first be completely torn down. When the pain reaches an unbearable point, a crossroads appears for the woman. Will she remain a victim forever? Or will she use this pain as fuel and embark on a journey into herself, into depths she has never explored before? A good woman, thanks to the creative and life-giving essence of her nature, eventually chooses the second path. She no longer spends her energy thinking, "Why did he leave? What did I do wrong?" Or, "How can I get him back?" She turns all her energy, like a laser beam, inward. She painfully realizes that until then, she had tied her happiness, her worth, and her identity to the presence, approval, and love of another person. This is a painful but incredibly liberating enlightenment. And one day, when she looks in the mirror, she no longer sees a hurt, abandoned woman there. There's a woman who wears her wounds like medals of honor, whose eyes hold the wisdom of someone who has weathered storms, whose smile is more genuine and stronger than before. She has become the hero of her own story, not its victim. She is no longer that mirror the man broke. She is now a sun that creates its own light. And this light is so bright that it begins to illuminate not only her own path but also the paths of everyone around her. Part 4. The weight of regret and the wisdom of GROW. The paths of our two characters have now diverged. While one flows serenely towards the ocean, the other is about to lose his way in the barren lands he himself created. For the man, Those whispers are now a noise that can no longer be ignored. Perhaps years have passed. Perhaps he thought he had built a new life. But one night, in a completely ordinary moment he didn't expect, that moment arrives. It is a moment of awareness, painful and clear, like a lightning strike. Maybe he's in the middle of a meaningless argument with his new partner. Maybe while listening to the deep silence at home. Or when he hears from a mutual friend how happy, how successful, how whole that woman is. At that moment, all his defense mechanisms, all his excuses, that false sense of freedom, shatter into pieces. He understands exactly what he has lost. He realizes he didn't just lose a lover. He lost the only refuge in his life, the only person who listened to him without judgment, that silent force that encouraged him to be a better man. He understands that while running from his own shadow, he actually extinguished the light of his life. This is the most painful victory of the shadow Jung spoke of, because the shadow has severed him not only from the woman but also from his own potential and wholeness. This awareness comes with deep regret. But this is not a simple if only. It is an existential ache that penetrates to the bone. Looking back, he sees how his life became colorless and mechanical from that point on. It is too late. The rivers have long found their beds. Impassable valleys lie between them. All he has left is the heavy, shocking knowledge of what and why he lost. On the other side, there's that river flowing peacefully on its own path. The woman. She no longer looks at the past with either anger or longing. The pain she experienced is no longer a wound, but a source of wisdom for her. She understands. That moment of breaking was actually the greatest gift of her life. Because without that pain, she would never have embarked on that deep journey within herself, never discovered her own strength and worth. She has forgiven the man. But this forgiveness is not to allow him back, but to completely free her own soul from that heavy burden. She no longer seeks happiness outside. She has learned how to cultivate her own inner garden. Her peace is no longer dependent on external conditions. It is an unshakable serenity that comes from within. Conclusion: not a story of a winner or a elo. This is not a story of revenge or about who wins and who loses. This is a story about the laws of the soul's growth. It is an example of what Jung called individuation, the journey of a human becoming a complete and whole individual by realizing all their potential and uniting the opposites within themselves. We started from the silence of a broken heart, passed through the valleys of regret, and reached the light of a soul reborn from its own ashes. This is not just the story of a man and a woman. It is a universal echo that resonates within all of us at different times, in different ways. This is the story of the soul's miraculous capacity for self-healing and growth. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time for such a quiet and deep reflection in our noisy world. This shows that you too are on a quest within your soul. Perhaps while listening to this story, a wound from your own past touched you. Perhaps you were the one hurt. Perhaps you were the one who hurt. Whichever side you are on, show yourself compassion. To be human is to make mistakes. To grow is to learn from those mistakes, to transform wounds into wisdom. Do not fear your shadow. Get to know it. Understand it. Because only when we accept the darkness can our light truly shine. If this narrative touched a place in your soul, sparked a thought, or lightened a burden in your heart, then it has served its purpose. Until our next meeting, take your steps courageously on your own inner journey, and always remember, your deepest wounds are where your greatest strength is hidden. Stay in peace.